how do I put this? There was a moment where I kind of wanted to stop because I felt like I wasn't good enough. And but yeah, just learning to accept that it's going to take time, and there's a process when it comes to this stuff is like huge for your just mental health and just your attitude towards all of it. So
The future of music.
The future of music. The future of music.
The future of music.
The future of music.
The Future of Music podcast.
Hey there, and welcome to y'all, or just you, just individually. I don't know that people listen in groups. I don't know if that was appropriate to say y'all, but if you do, that'd be pretty cool too. I'd be all right with that. Hey, we are here. It's the Future of Music podcast, where we show you how to survive and thrive in the future of music. I am one of your hosts, Ryan Withrow, and I am joined with the other host, Jonathan Boyd. Man, I can't even. I don't even care about your personal life today. I'm just too excited.
I know, man. You never do.
Nice. I don't even know. The guest isn't like visibly here yet. We're about to pull him in. And I'll just kind of nerd out a little more right now, saying that I am a super fanboy of the guest that we have. 8 times out of 10, I'm in the gym. It's this guy that I am listening to. So I'm very excited for today. Why should they be excited though?
Yeah, I think, whenever new technology comes about, new instruments, new virtual things that are, becoming more ubiquitous nowadays, people kind of dabble in it. They kind of try a few things here, sprinkle it on some old style music, and it doesn't really work. It kind of sounds like a Microsoft Paint version of a song or something like that. But our guest today really, really freaking nails it. I don't know how he does it. That's what we're going to find out on the podcast. But man, he uses all the newest tools, all of the, the currently and commonly frowned upon digital tools and production gear and all that kind of stuff. But he comes up with a really, really dang good product. And I can't wait to dive in to see how he does it and why he does it.
Yeah, and I'll try to tone down the excitement as much as possible to not scare him. So hopefully he sticks around for the entire episode as well. And hopefully you do, as well as the future ones, right? Because if you just click like, subscribe, and the alert button, you'll be alerted of every single one of these that comes out. And make sure to follow on your favorite podcast platform. But with that, I think it's time. All right, y'all. We are joined by the beard competition crew for Jonathan. I think, Ramon, you just started growing that like 2 days ago to beat Jonathan, and it's okay. I think you're close.
awesome. No, I just started growing it an hour ago, actually.
That's so
Kind of like that
good.
Simpsons episode.
Yeah, it
In the
is.
bag.
It is. Absolutely. Man, I said it in the intro. I would classify myself as a total Andromida fanboy at this point. And I'm so excited to have you and just kind of connect with you and chat and kind of bring you to all the people that are going to be listening to this as well, for those of you that don't know. But yeah, you are literally a one-man massive production. Like when you listen to your stuff, it's just so epic. And we'll listen to a couple examples here in a second. But I remember hearing it and being like, this has to be like a whole setup, like a whole crew, like contributing to this thing. And I was like, just one guy, just one dude. That's it. So it was incredible. But real name, Ramon Gutierrez. You go as Andromida on all the socials, though, and we'll plug all of that, and it's all in the description as well for everybody. But I think a little bit of your story that's really compelling and amazing to me, that I'm really amazed by. First and foremost, you're legally blind. Am I correct?
That is correct. Yeah. So I have a condition called nystagmus, which causes my eyes to like shake kind of back and forth, and I don't know how much you could tell on the webcam.
Sure.
But
Okay.
they're kind of like moving back and forth, and I've had that since birth, and yeah, it's just because of that, and I think I do have a little bit of astigmatism on top of it, but I'm legally blind, so I've always had issues like reading music and stuff, because so I grew up playing the violin, and obviously, when you're playing the violin, you're kind of holding it like this, right? And so I can't really read music because I can't really read anything that's like too far away. Like I can't read anything on the screen right now. Like I have to be like up here to be able to read it. And you can't really do that when you're playing the violin. Mm-hmm. So I just ended up learning by ear, and obviously with the help of a teacher, but then that translated into learning guitar by myself. And I'm just been lucky to be blessed with an ear for music.
Yeah, man. And I mean, I don't even say that as like that's a negative or anything. It's just one of those things that I'd been listening to you for so long, and me being a guy that went to school for music composition theory, and like somebody that's always just like staring at a DAW all day trying to compose stuff. When I first heard your music, like my brain went to how many actual tracks are probably being created, how many MIDI synths and everything you have to be programming. And it was just like, how? That is like incredible that you can
Ye-
organize all of this and do all of this work. It's amazing.
yeah, my DAW projects. My computer doesn't like me. I'll say that.
That's so good, man. But yeah, so you said at like 3, I think it said you began learning violin.
Yep.
That happened to where you started really trying to learn by ear. And then 11 was the age that you started playing around with the guitar. And same thing,
Yeah.
completely by ear, self-taught on guitar. And then you kind of transcended into this writing and production world that I know you from. And it's funny, John. I think you'll align with one of the quotes that I found in the bio, which was after trying and failing several times to form a band, he eventually decided to do something himself. I think we've all been there. Okay, drummers are the worst, but
Oh my
you know,
god.
but
That
it's
was
okay.
easily the hardest time I had was finding a drummer. But I mean, in general, like I was just it was hard finding people that were like wanting to take this like serious.
Mm-hmm.
And so I mean, eventually I was just like, I had already seen like other projects, like one man projects, pro guitarists doing their thing, and I was like, you know what, why don't I just do this and just
Yeah,
go from there. And
yeah.
yeah, I've never looked back. I feel like that's the best decision I've ever could have made, because I feel like I have all the creative freedom in the world that I could want, and I could collab with whoever I want when I want, and so it just made sense. And yeah, I'm really happy that I decided to take this route.
Yeah, and
So
I feel like
how
before I continue, John, I have to apologize to my previous drummer, Phil. Phil, I'm sorry. I didn't mean what I just said. I'm really sorry about it, Phil. Go ahead, John.
yeah, so how old were you when you decided to go it on your own?
This was probably in college, so it's probably like 19, 20-ish around there was when I decided I just gonna do this myself, and that was like
Got
uh
it.
yeah, that it was so like throughout my high school years. I mean, I kind of always knew it. Like I always knew from like when I was little that I wanted to do music, something music related. And then as I got older and got more into guitar, obviously and got into like metal and stuff. That's eventually where I wanted landed to be like, okay, I want to do heavy music for a living. A bad
Right.
choice, but no, but yeah. So in high school and stuff, that's when I started like learning. I'm like learning how to use a DAW and all that stuff. Like I'm all self-taught on that too. I started with like Logic 9, I think is what I started working. Or no, actually no, it was GarageBand was what I started with, and then I switched over to Logic 9. But yeah, like I had a Line 6 Pod 500X or something like
Mhm.
that. Just do it, just doing stuff like that, being the typical bedroom guitarist. And yeah, so that's kind of how I started, and then eventually as I got into college and stuff, and I started, really taking it seriously, because when I was in college, it kind of hit me that I was like, I don't want to do what I'm doing. I
Mhm.
really didn't like college, and so I really buckled down and tried to learn, and yeah, and now here we are.
So we know what your music sounds like now, and we'll get to that here in a minute. But take us back to that time where you started going out on your own. You just talked about a little bit of the gear that you were using. You mentioned guitar several times. So how did you get basically from then? What kind of gear were you using? How were you thinking about coming up with writing songs and things like that? What was the type of stuff that you were playing back then, and how did that evolve to where you are now?
Gotcha. So yeah, so what I was using back then, I can't remember what year the laptop was, but it was a Mac laptop, and I was just plugging directly USB with the pod, and I was using that, and I had like it was like a Schecter 7 string with with like one of the cheaper Floyd Roses on there, which that guitar made me hate Floyd Rose so much. I hate changing the strings on that thing.
Does
But yeah,
anybody like it? Real question. Does anybody like it? I don't
Not
think
unless
anyone-
you have a guitar tech.
Okay,
That's the
all
moment
right,
you like
good.
them.
That's settled. All right, continue.
yeah. That's a guitar I had, and I remember I was to play, like, to have bass in my songs. I was just taking my guitar and dropping it, an entire octave and on the pod, and just using that as like my quote unquote bass. And then for like drums, I remember straight up just finding like a free like pack of samples, like not even like a drum, like a like a machine or whatever. It was just like the samples, and just manually putting those in tracks in the DAW to to make my drum patterns. And yeah, so whenever I was first getting into like actually recording and stuff, around this time was like when I had started finding bands like Periphery and Volumes and all that. So obviously I, being the teenager that I was, and seeing the hype around all this, I was trying to make, the whole do the whole genty thing.
Mhm.
And I still have those bands, but yeah, so that's kind of like, where I was falling into as far as my creative influences went. And then as time went on, obviously I started to refine it and whatnot. I actually, got better at, mixing and stuff, which that's been a process. Even now, I still feel like I'm learning. But
Yeah, man, I just got to say one. I didn't choose this guitar. It's just it was just there, and it's the Misha right up there. But periphery note there. But I think your setup was probably better than ours, honestly. Originally, I think I told John this at one point. I remember my first rig was literally like a Line 6 amp head. That like just went. I just like took a speaker out and I just went in directly into the sound card. Like direct
oh,
just
okay.
into the sound card, man. And I was using, I think it was called Cakewalk at the time, like,
Yep.
which was just terrible. And I was using the drums. So basically I was like direct into the audio source right there into the audio card. And then it was like just MIDI everything. It was like original Doom soundtrack drums and keyboards. So I feel like,
That's awesome.
at least with the pod, you were doing better than I was. And you probably had actual drums, is what it sounded like, more than likely. So that's not bad. That's pretty good. So now, one question that I have to kind of take us into the next step here is guitar. That's what you were doing at first, and then you started talking about. I was thinking about production and mixing and all of this stuff. Like, what was that point that you go from this very like analog, like I've got this thing on my desk, I'm going to plug into it, I'm going to plug into the computer, it's all right here, to like discovering the multitude of things you could be doing outside of that within the DAW. So using VSTs, plugins, MIDI, all that stuff. Like, when did that happen? How did that happen? Was it by accident? Was it on purpose? And like, when was it?
It was definitely, I would say, probably by accident. Because whenever I was using GarageBand, and I had, like I said, I had like rip sample, like free samples off of somewhere. It was like off some YouTube video or something. I figured out that GarageBand had like its own little MIDI drum kit in there, and I was like, oh, I can. This makes my life so much easier to have one track where I can put all the little dots and do the thing. And I feel like that was the moment where I was like, okay, so what else can I do? What else can I, do with MIDI? And obviously that led into the whole rabbit hole of finding like MIDI bass and, from
MIDI
there, like,
everything.
yeah, MIDI,
mean,
pretty much everything.
So
MIDI
so I
MIDI
think
eggs.
for for those people that are like, what does it even sound like? Like, what are you talking about? Like, John and I know, and obviously, pretty sure what your productions sound like. I'm actually going to play two quick samples here so that we can kind of talk through what's going on and really understand like what the heck you're using behind the scenes to make this happen. But the first one that I found you on, I maybe where a lot of people found you, I don't know. It might have been the Spotify algorithm lords that were like, this guy likes Mick Gordon, so let's introduce him to Andromida. But for me, it was the one where there were zero guitars. There were just no guitars in the track, and I didn't know that. It just started playing it, and I was like, wow, this is really great synth stuff with guitars. I got to look it up. And I was like, there are no guitars. So I'm going to actually play that video. So you'll see the video for everybody watching on YouTube, and then you'll actually hear the production as well. But it's just a quick 47-second video of how I was introduced to you. Here we go. And now I'm going to quit trying to record anything. I'm going to quit. I'm done. Sell
That was it.
everything
That was it.
I
Fun.
own. I mean, like, that's madness, man. Like, in the most beautiful way. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying like that's terrible. I'm saying it's madness. Like just being somebody that works again in DAW. And like really does a lot of production stuff, mainly with guitar and like adding synths in here and there. Just to know the amount going on in something like that. I mean, like most people might listen to that and think, okay, they're like 800 instruments. Cool. But like realizing like every instrument has like a cutoff dip, and you have to do that, and you have to like do the crescendos, and you have like all of the programming and automation that goes into something like that is just like beyond me. So I found you through there, and then I'm like, oh, okay, he's just a really great music production guy. Great. At least I can feel confident that I'm a good guitarist. And then I started listening to your 8-string guitar stuff. So let me sample that real quick, and we'll dive into the details here. But this is you playing as well as composing and doing the production. Incredible stuff. Yeah, man. I mean, that is like badass, dude. That is so good. And I think the only thing I'm jealous of and envious of before we move on is that I like you're ear trained, you're self-taught. And like the fact that I'm hearing things as like the composer brain, that like a proper person of like in composition would be doing with music theory and everything. It's just like amazing to me, like hearing all those harmonies, the chord changes, the leading tones, like everything that my brain looks at, and you just kind of are like, sounds good. We'll just do that. Whereas I would have overanalyzed it. It would have taken me 3 years to compose. But amazing stuff, first of all. And I just kind of want to, I just want to dive in, man. Like there's a lot in there. So the big question for me is when you're sitting down and you're doing these incredible compositions and productions, you know, what goes into that? What technology are you like actively taking advantage of that exists out there right now that is just like something that a lot of people don't use and don't dabble into, but it's available. You can use it. You use it all the time. Like what goes into a proper production for Andromida?
So probably one of the biggest things, and you know, we saw it in the first little video, is Serum. Serum has become like one of my like pillars of of my music. Like the Serum is basically everything I do now. I think it's personally it's one of those times where you find a piece of like gear and you're like, yeah, I don't ever need anything else now. Like Serum has done everything that I've ever wanted it to do, from like, so like in that clip with you know the whole metal synths or whatever, that little bell that you're hearing like in the second half, that's also Serum. That's not like an acoustic bell or whatever. That's Serum also. Um, so Serum is like a huge source of like, not only is it like a huge part of music, it's also a huge source of like inspiration. Like I get a lot of ideas just from tinkering around with Serum, and I love when like gear does that, where you like find a piece of gear and just like messing with stuff, just like ideas start popping in your head. Um, like I had a delay pedal that would do that too. The Horizon, the Flux Echo, that delay
Mhm.
pedal was really cool. Um, but yeah, Serum is a big one. As far as like orchestral stuff goes, oh my god, I have Contact everywhere in my sessions. Contact is probably the Serum and Contact are like probably on par with how much it gets used in my sessions. But yeah, I use a lot of Contact libraries, a lot of like from 8DO specifically. I really like their orchestral libraries and stuff. Um, because they're like really in depth too. Like the how in depth you can go with like the MIDI programming is kind of insane. For It's kind of crazy to see how far stuff has come for like orchestral stuff and whatnot. And
Mhm.
obviously, if you've listened to my music, there's a lot of the time I've got like orchestral stuff, and I try to go for like a cinematic feel most of the time. Because I'm a huge uh fan. Like I love listening to a lot of like video game music,
Yeah,
and
sure.
so yeah, a lot of video game music, a lot of movie soundtracks. Um, so when funny enough, that's like when I was starting Andromeda, I wanted to go into it being like, I want to how do I combine metal with like movie and video game like orchestral stuff? Was that which is how that originally started.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, I
but
mean, it's very impressive, especially from the orchestral part. So, Contact, are you using that for everything orchestral? Are you using it for the percussion, as well as strings and everything?
yeah, Contact is being used for all of that. It's all different Contact libraries that you're hearing. Um, percussion.
And we can just we'll just send this to Contact and Serum,
Contact
and we'll
sponsor me,
just
please.
it's like sponsorship is needed. So, how many tracks would you say go into something like that? Like for example,
Oh
like
boy.
on average, how many tracks do you have actively going in your digital workstation?
Uh, I want to say on like a full finished song, probably like at least 200, if not more.
That is
Yeah, it's
insane, man.
yeah,
How
it's a
long does it
lot.
take for your like template to boot up? Like, how long does it
A
take
long
for?
time. I'm not even kidding. There's times where I felt like it's taken like 20 minutes to load up. Like
Yeah,
it takes so long to get to boot up for sure. Yeah,
yeah.
my
That's
if I have in sections where I have like a lot running at once, my computer does not like it.
yeah, I have we're really good friends with a guy named Luca Torelli, who is like that Italian guitarist of Rhapsody back in the day, and he does all his compositions in the DAW with all the available synths and MIDI that's available. But I remember talking to him, and his template used to take 4.5 hours to load up. So he would like
Jesus Christ.
wake up first thing in the morning, click load up, go work out, go eat, get ready for the day, like run his errands, and he'd come back, and he's like, every now and then I'd come back, and it would have crashed. Like I was,
Oh
it
my
was done. I had to restart. He's
Oh
like, I
no.
still run Cubase 4 because it crashes every time you use Cubase 5 or beyond. It's amazing what happens, and you don't know all the stuff that's going on, but I think that's amazing stuff. John, what do you got? I've been rambling on about this stuff. After hearing that stuff, what questions you got?
Yeah, I actually want to back up just a little bit with a quick question that I've been wondering about, and then we'll kind of dive into some future facing stuff. Um, when you were talking about moving from, let's say, guitars and what Ryan said, analog equipment, things like that, um, what did you find that kind of moving everything into the box, so to speak, like in the computer, was just a convenience thing for you in a way because you wanted to be you're the person doing everything, calling all the shots. So there's like a
Yeah,
convenience tool for you.
so funny enough, the switch to going completely in the box didn't happen until like relatively recently, because up until like not even a year ago. I was using an XFX2 for my guitars,
Mm.
and it was kind of like a convenience thing where because I had this is partly in part actually because of getting heavily with synth stuff and doing all of like Serum in the box and whatnot, and because I was doing so much in the box and like a bunch of automations and stuff, it felt like it made sense to just do that with the guitar, guitar amps themselves, so that I could also automate, parameters of the amp and all that in the DAW, because obviously I can't do that with an XFX.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, the switch over to in the box stuff, yeah, it was kind of a convenience thing, but it was also, I would also say it was also a creativity factor as well, because of the
Yeah.
fact that in the box and being able to automate anything, I can do a
Mhm.
lot more now, creatively speaking. So yeah, so
Yeah,
for that.
that makes sense. And actually, I think it definitely adds for me. It adds to your really unique sound, because if you're using 8-string guitars, I mean, so many other people are using 8-string guitars. It can only sound so different. You know what I mean? But yeah, it's really what you have achieved, and like the sound that you have reminds me of, in general. This is a blanket statement, but like in general, iconic bands. Pink Floyd sounds like Pink Floyd. You know what I'm saying? Rolling Stones sound like Rolling Stones. Your stuff sounds like your stuff. So that's really, really cool for me. So you mentioned Axe Effects, and I think we have an interesting, I guess, timeline happening for all of us who have been in the game, so to speak, for a number of years. And that is that we all started out with analog instruments, plugging into an amplifier, coming from, that's how things were done. Not even into the recording, but all the playing. And then as we go further, into, 80s came around, synths started becoming really popular, but focusing on guitar, we started having people playing like Line 6 and Axe Effects and things that were not an amp, but some kind of a digital version of that. And now it seems like you're moving even further from that. Like you're not even on the Axe Effects. So at this point, you just said that you're doing everything in the box, and a lot of what we talk about on this show is the things that are coming. Right? It's called the future of music. So obviously, we talk about VR a lot. There's a lot of AI talk. I'm wondering to hear, what are your thoughts when you look, like, even a year from now, really, but a year, 3 years, 5 years from now, how do you see what you're doing changing based on the new technologies that are becoming available?
Well, that's kind of that's a deep question. um, I'd be interested. I'd be honestly interested to see how AI can make things like easier in a way. I'm very curious to see, because I'm all about. I know like this is kind of controversial, but I'm all about like being as efficient as possible. So if there's an AI tool out there that can help me get like to a mix ready point quicker, I'll use it. So but yeah, I'd be interested to see how AI would affect. I would say more so the production side of thing. When it comes to like creativity and stuff, I definitely prefer to be the one, just
Mm.
doing everything in that front. I very very rarely use like pre-designed like loops or anything like that. I'd try to come up with everything by myself. Um, yeah, AI. Let's see. Hmm. I haven't really thought too much about that. I'd be curious to see. Well, you know what? Actually, here's one. So this is also going to be a bit controversial, but I do use MIDI guitar from time to time for certain things. I'd be curious to see how realistic MIDI guitar can actually get in the future. Um. Uh. I again, I probably would use it for convenience sake. I'm not even gonna
Sure.
lie.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
MIDI guitar. um. I'd say MIDI guitar is probably the big one. Actually, I'd be really curious to see how far that could go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think they've kind of started that.
Yeah, they have.
I keep seeing a few iterations of that, and I think they just came out with, like, in the last year, an 8-string version of them trying to be able to write heavy, genty riffs on it, and it's not there yet. All right, it's close, but
Yeah.
every now and then when they're like, let's do like a pinch harmonic. No, no, it's not there yet. It sounds like the pinch harmonics did when I plugged directly into the sound card, actually. So, at least it's at that point. But yeah, I think that it's funny. We talked to so many people. I think this is like, I don't know, 30 something episodes in at the, I've lost count. But we talked to a lot of people. And I think when it comes to AI, um, you're the first one, I think, that's been the opposite. So you're the first one that has said, I don't want to use it for creativity. I'd prefer to use it for efficiency and just getting stuff done. A lot of the people that we've had chats with are all about, if it's a building block to help me be more creative or to like give me an idea, and then I start the process of writing and recording and doing stuff. That's really been the big thing. All great answers, including yours, by the way, because I agree. I can't imagine how long it takes you to do one damn song, man. But it's just interesting to hear that take and that side. Quick question that might help me understand the relevancy there. You care if I ask, how old are you right now?
I'm 27.
27. Okay. All right. I'm 36. John is 112. You wouldn't know it. But but it's okay. He holds it well, man. But it kind of makes sense. It kind of makes sense. I think that what we're coming to find, and I'd be interested in your take on this, Ramon, is do you think that contributes to that thought process where you're like, I'll use it all day? As AI is starting to come out, if it helps, use it all. I don't care. Do you think that's because, you're not like a teenager, but you're younger? You are definitely of the younger generation that was able to come into this world of digital stuff and like advancements in technology for music production. Do you think that kind of contributes to your willingness and like excitement about all the AI stuff?
I definitely think it does. Yeah, I feel like it does for sure. Yeah, like you said, I did grow up in a, coming up with all these digital stuff, and despite, this is kind of a little tangent here, but it kind of ties into everything. Like me growing up, despite being legally blind, I was really into video games, and computers and stuff. So yeah, so the the fact that I grew up with all this stuff, I feel like definitely has contributed to me being more open about using AI and stuff. And so
yeah, good.
And yeah, I'm all for being as efficient as I can be, because I'm one of those people that, like, when I make a song, I don't like sitting on it for a long time. I like putting out music, at a pretty steady pace. So I like to be efficient in order to do that. Releasing a song a month, you kind of have to you have to have some kind of system in place. And I do when it comes to like mixing and stuff. Like I have certain things I just kind of always do in all my songs. And but having an AI that would even help, push that even further would be awesome, I feel like.
Yeah, I think there's some tools already for engineering, producing, etc., that we know of some other producers. It's kind of like an assistant, really, and not like a robot assistant, but you know what I mean. There are different tools that I think you should probably explore. And in fact, Ryan, we should do an episode specifically about that, about engineering, producing tools, etc. But what I find fascinating about this is most of the talk in music that we find is mainly done by older folks. And what I mean by older is all of the classic rock bands or whatever are kind of finally dying off, right? We're coming to that place where, and I don't mean finally in a good way. I mean,
figuratively and literally.
No,
yeah, sadly.
No, but I mean, that era has come and gone, right? The real music explosion, rock and roll, R&B, all that stuff. It kind of came and went already. We're kind of seeing the tail end of it. And it's really interesting to see. Obviously, this show is called The Future of Music, but it's interesting to see from your perspective, Ramon, somebody who's from the quote younger generation, who grew up with things like Line 6. I remember when that came out, like who grew up with the things like Line 6 and plugging your guitar into a little device that you can hear, from your headphones or whatever. That didn't exist before. And to hear somebody who came up with that and is focused on, I want to make my music and I'm just going to use the tools that are available, to help me do that in the best way possible. You're not really focused on, well, it needs to be a 1962 Fender Stratocaster, man. It's interesting to see that shift happening. And I think it just gives us a really cool glimpse into what does the future of music actually look like for people who are creating it like yourself.
Yeah, I agree for sure. Yeah, I feel like, I don't know. Personally, for me, I try not to worry so much as, mean, it doesn't. The thing is, it doesn't really matter to me like how something was created. What matters to me is the end product. Is like if I enjoy it or not. And so when it comes to like making music, I don't really care what it takes to get the sound I'm after, as long as I can get the sound that I'm after. And that kind of that kind of thought also, like if you look at it's like my mixing session, there's some areas where I'm doing some really weird things that people would probably consider like wrong or whatever, but it's like the sound is still there, so I'll take it.
Yeah, that's. I mean, it does sound great as well. So forget the naysayers. All right, just don't let them see your doll. And it'll be fine. It'll be all right. I think. So I would say two last questions for me, and then John, I'll go to you for any last questions. But one of them is, you mentioned a song a month. You mentioned that you're down to get like this song done as fast as possible. Just get it out. Keep producing new songs. Was it always like that, or did you have to teach yourself and like be really strict on yourself to be like, no, like I can't sit on this more, like it's done, like I can't touch it anymore, like it just put it out there, I can't tweak it or anything? Was there a moment like that, or have you always been like that, like a very fast, efficient, like just get it done?
I I would say it was kind of I guess both to start out. Like I knew like I've never had a moment where I was like where I sat on like a song and just endlessly tweaked it to death. I've never had that, but I've definitely as time has gone on, I've definitely been able to like sort of look at things and sort of reflect and be like, okay, probably could have put out this. This was probably done earlier than I probably thought it was, right? Um, it's definitely something that over time I've just gotten better at. It's like practicing basically. And then the more you write music and finish songs, that the easier it becomes. At least for me, that's what it's felt like. So I've gone to a point where I don't really feel like I ever have writer's block per se, just because I'm so used to being able to get my ideas out and filter out my ideas. So yeah, I just feel like it's something that over time I've just, I guess, refined, and to the point where now, I feel like I can put out a song, one a month at least, if not more.
It's impressive to do so, and I think it's also potentially another thing that comes with your age as well. You're kind of like in that prime of Instagram scrolling and like the TikToks, and everything, to where it's just like fast, and it's just like quick action all the time. Whereas, an album back in the day when I was listening to songs probably took the artist like a year to create and to record and to go through the process and to retrack and do all this stuff. It's a really
cool what's funny too is I had like there was a moment in time too where I remember specifically like making a post on this, like about this on like Facebook and stuff, whenever like the like reels and stuff like just like really started to become popular. I remember asking people like, do you even really care about albums anymore? Or would you just prefer I just pump out singles? And I would say most answers were like, no, keep doing albums. But I decided to do it. I decided to take a year where I did like a test and just did singles for the entire year, and I saw that like, wow, my growth went up like a whole bunch. This is what people actually want to see.
We interviewed Bernth, and we're friends with him as well. Same thing. He has gotten to a point where he's like singles, just all singles. But what I like about your stuff, and John, I'll go to you for a question before I give the last one after this. But what I like about your stuff is that it's all still cohesive in that way. So as somebody that listens for that like composition ear, your albums, what I like, it's efficiency. Again, you're releasing like a single, and then eventually at some point, like it's just like, guess what? It was an album. To where you're just like, it's all in one. I did it all. But it's all very cohesive and it all works together and tells the same story, which is really good. But John, last questions from you, and then I've got the big one to end from here.
Yeah, I would say, last thing for me is, if you were president, how would you save the world? I'm just kidding. No, really, for somebody who you mentioned early on, you mentioned a minute ago, early on in this podcast and early on in your life that you were serious about making music and you had trouble, finding band members, getting band members. That's a very common theme among band leaders. They have a hard time, keeping people with a job, basically. But you seem to have carried that. That's just part of you. You're focused. You know what you want to put out. You do it, etc. So I would ask, for somebody who is maybe they're a little older than you, but following in your footsteps in terms of being a few years behind you as far as your progress of music production, how would you encourage them to number one continue? But what would you tell them to do?
Well, the one thing I would definitely say is accept like the like learn to love the journey of it, because it's definitely a process. It's not something that happens overnight, and I feel like that for me has been like the biggest thing is learning to appreciate just to appreciate learning, basically. I'm always trying to learn new things, and I feel like it helps keep things interesting also. And just it helps me stay humble and grounded too. So just always understanding that you know you're you're in a better spot than you were yesterday, but you still can go further,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of thing. I feel like having that mentality is like huge. Especially for me, there was definitely a time where I felt like how do I put this? There was a moment where I kind of wanted to stop because I felt like I wasn't good enough. Um, but yeah, just learning to accept that it's going to take time, and there's a process when it comes to this stuff is like huge for your just mental health and just your attitude towards all of it. So that's what I would say.
For sure. Thanks.
Yeah, good answer. And I think I hear some of the best people that say something similar or have the same motivation. One of their go-tos is, if you've recorded for years, listen to your first one. Like, just
Oh,
go
yeah.
back to that first one and then listen to today's and be like, all right, okay, all right, we're a little better off. We're doing well.
Yeah, that's actually like I've done that from time to time where I'll dig up an old recording from like it doesn't even have to be that long ago either. Like I'll like now I'll listen to some of like my older songs and just be like, wow, I've improved a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's amazing. So I guess the last question I have for you is what's next? So we were talking about the future of music, but we're talking about the future of Andromida. What is next for you in terms of what projects you have coming up? We just saw that somebody like Barenth, who's a solo guitar player as well, just did a tour, his first solo tour. Like, what kind of stuff you got coming up? What do you got?
So so my recent releases have been, I've been doing a lot of collabs with vocalists recently. And so I've got an EP coming together with different vocalists on each track, which I'm really stoked about. But the other thing that probably people aren't expecting is, so because I've been working with vocalists a lot this year, I've come to realize I love working with vocals, and it's kind of inspired me to want to do it myself. So I would say 2024 probably expects something with my own vocals on it. So that's probably the big thing coming up.
Look at truly a one-man band.
Yeah.
Now at this point, that coffee shop tour is going to look real ridiculous with all the wires and everything that you need. I just can hear you at the Starbucks now playing these hits. They'll love you. But yeah, man, I mean, I'm so honored to have you here and grateful to finally connect again. I've probably been listening to you for like a year or two at this point, and everything you put out, I'm excited to see. So I'm excited to see more of your journey and what comes of that. So we'll keep in touch with there. But outside of that, if anybody wants to check you out and go all over and deep dive and go in, Instagram, YouTube, the TikToks, Facebook, Patreon, all of it. It's just Andromida Official with an I, not an E. Let's note that. All right. We'll make sure we have the links in the description as well for the show. official website is andromidaofficial.com. There's a theme here, it seems, as well. And those are the main ones. We'll put all of your links down below for everybody on top of that. But man, I really appreciate having you here. We are so happy to be connected now. And I'm just really grateful. Thank you so much for being here, man. And thank you to all of you. Where's it at? I'm pointing for those people that are listening. All of you for watching and sticking around. Make sure you start listening. I'll also put his Spotify down there so that you can make sure that you start really nerding out in the gym like me. But thanks for watching as always, and thanks for being here for the Future of Music podcast.